So tonight I've titled this talk Facing Fear. And I want to start by saying that the fear that I'm speaking of is fear of something that's inside. It's not about necessarily fear of spiders or anything outside of us. This is more about something inside of us that we're scared of. Because really, the inner world is completely under our control. And the inner world is where we hold ourselves hostage, and the inner world is where we provide freedom for ourselves. So where we can look at where there's fear inside, that is going to provide freedom for us to interact with ourselves more freely. It's going to free up energy to interact with the world more freely. So I'm going to start by just saying that, and say really what the things that we are. There's a story about Stephen Colbert, and whether you like him or not is irrelevant. This is a friend of his was going through a divorce or having difficulty in a relationship, and she consulted him for advice. And what do you think I should do? And she laid out like 5 or 6 options, and he said, well, which one of these scares you the most? And she said, this one. And she goes, that's the one. It's the things that we are scared most to do that hold the greatest for us. Things that we are most scared of in ourselves, that's where our greatest lessons are. So we have our internal fears. We're scared, like there's a part of me that I don't want people to see, or like I'm really scared of feeling humiliated, or I'm really scared of being alone, or I'm really scared of saying the wrong thing, or being a failure. All of those things, when I'm scared of that, it's going to inherently limit me of how I'm going to be in the world. So one of my teachers, wonderful woman named Tara Brock, gave a talk recently, and she used this as an example, and I thought this was really lovely. If you ever go to a party and there's someone at the party that you don't want to see, that you don't want to interact with, but you know that they're there, right? The entire night that you're there, where's that person? Okay, great. And then, okay, how long are they walking over here? Okay, great. Now I have to walk over this way. And like your entire night has got that in the back of your mind or in the forefront of your mind. Like, I don't want to see this person. I don't want to interact with this person. And so it affects your spontaneity, and it affects how free you can be. It affects conversations with people who are not that person that you want to avoid. There is this fear of like, I don't want to have this because it's going to bring something up in me, or I have to talk about something I don't talk about, or I have to face something that I don't want to face. And that it taints your entire experience. So as we can face the things within us that we're scared of, and we say, okay, it's okay if this is here, right? So if the person at the party, it's like, okay, well, it's okay if this person's here. If we interact, we do. And if it's unpleasant, okay. It's helpful to ask, like, what's the worst that's going to happen, right? I'll be embarrassed. I'll be humiliated. Like, okay, and then what? But I don't want to feel that. I know, but that's okay. Right? None of those feelings are not fatal, right? You might say, oh, I'm so embarrassed I could die. But that's really, a figure of speech. It's not actual truth, right? It's different from a gunshot wound or a bus or a car accident. Like it's a feeling, and it may be really unpleasant, sure. And fear is something that we come about naturally, right? We're scared of things that have happened to us. We're scared of pain that we've experienced in the past, and we don't want to have that again. That's a natural response. Absolutely appropriate, right? And I might be scared of things because of what's happened in my life, but I grew up Jewish, but I never faced anti-Semitism in my life. I just haven't. And so my family members have. I have family members who passed away in the Holocaust. So for them, anytime that something around that comes up, they get super triggered and they get really scared. I just don't have that reaction. It just hasn't been my experience. It doesn't mean that their fear is wrong. They're not scared of things that I'm scared of. Okay, super. But it's not about that. It's not about comparing my fear to theirs or whether fear is wrong. We've all come about our own fears based on our own experiences for our own reasons. And we're the only ones who have seen our lives from the inside out. We're the only ones who have met the people we've met and felt the things we felt and heard and tasted all the things that we have from the inside out. And so the feedback that we've gotten from the world has prompted us to be scared of some things. Totally natural. But it's not necessarily being scared of a dog biting you or being scared of spiders crawling into your tent at night. This is about how we take that feedback from outside and we internalize it. And we say, well, I'm scared to speak up because I will get shouted down. I'm scared to say what I really feel because people will leave me. Like, that is going to be in your mind, just like that person in the party the whole time. And that's going to, influence everything you say. It's going to influence the way that you are in the world. Sometimes it's there and it's really subtle and we're so accustomed to it that we don't even know that it's driving the bus. But it absolutely is. So one of the things to consider as we start to look at these things is, we grow from the moment that whatever pain happened that caused the fear that we now have. We've grown since then, right? So if you consider maybe like the first time you got your heart broken, right? You were young, and then like, if you get your heart broken again, it happens again now. It's not like that now is that now it's like, oh, well, it's no big deal. It's not like, okay, it's fine. But we have the perspective, having grown from all these years since then, right? And so for parents who then see their kids get their heart broken for the first time, it might be like, well, I get that sucks, and there's nothing I can say that's going to take it away, but we have the wisdom of experience to say, I've grown beyond that capacity. I've grown beyond that understanding, right? If a toy breaks when you're a kid, that's your world, right? Or a fish dies, a pet dies, like that's certainly painful, and can certainly lead to some problems, some fears. But as we grow, right, we gain greater perspective. So now if, something happens like in that same realm, like, oh, okay, that stinks, but I understand it from a greater perspective. Right? It's understanding middle school from a high school perspective, or middle school from a college perspective. Like, the problems which you had when you were in middle school, they were the biggest problems you'd ever faced. They were intense. But we grow, and we grow in capacity, we grow in wisdom, we grow in experience beyond that. So if we go back and look at where these fears actually started from, it can be really intimidating to face these things. But we go back and look at, like, okay, well, I was really scared to be alone, really scared of being lonely, because that's how I felt a lot growing up. So that when I was about 10 or 12, I had this mindset of like, okay, I remember thinking distinctly, this is my biggest fear. I don't want to end up alone. And I forgot about it. And then over time, that governed what kind of relationships I got in romantically, friendship-wise. It's how I treated my parents. It's how I treated peers. I was like, I'm not really going to share my opinion because I'm just going to fit in with the crowd, and I'm going to fit in with these people, and I'll fit in with that people, and I'm not really going to, speak up, because that is going to potentially alienate somebody. But ultimately, what that ended up happening was that the people around me were like, well, Dave's not really authentic. Dave's just kind of like being fawning, and he's not really sharing much with the group. So like, we don't really want to spend time with him. And so I ended up doing that anyway. I ended up ending up alone anyway. But what ended up happening for me is that once I started facing this fear, I'm like, oh, I get that. Then all of a sudden it loses its teeth. I formed that when I was 10. I'm a little wiser than when I was 10. Right? I've grown since then. Doesn't mean that the wounds are suddenly gone, but like, I can put it in perspective. And really, that's what so much of this practice of meditation is about. So much of what the spiritual path is about, personal growth is about, is putting things in a bigger perspective and understanding, the things that had happened to us then, like, okay, that was when I was 10 or when I was 15 or when I was 20, but I've grown since then. I'm different. Likewise, the things that are happening to us right now, the things that we're stuck on or we're having issues with right now, we're going to grow out of this too. There's something, we're going to be older than this. We will continue to grow in capacity. And this will have whatever my grandmother would always say, this too shall pass. It was one of her. She said it all the time. Anytime something bad happened, well, this too shall pass. So, and it's true. But I will encourage you to consider the places that you run from inside. Right? Where in you do you feel like, I'm really scared, if I'm found out to be a fraud. I'm really scared if I find out if I'm a failure. I'm really scared if I'm humiliated or embarrassed. Because if you can start facing those things and welcome that as part of the conversation, it disarms it. One last story is when I was graduating from acupuncture school, graduating from graduate school, I was the class speaker. And I was very happy with what I had written in a speech, but I did not know how big the crowd was going to be. I did not know that there's going to be 350 people. We had a class of 45. So I was not expecting this huge audience, but there it was. And I stood up in the podium, and I had never delivered a speech to something like this large before. And I noticed it, and I went gulp, and I felt like the fear right there. Like, what if I trip over my words? What if I don't enunciate clearly? What if my jokes fall flat? But what I said at the microphone the first time was, before I even read my speech, I was like, wow, that's a lot of people here. That's a lot more than I was expecting. And it disarmed the fear. I named it, and it took its teeth away. Instead of like, a lot of people here, a lot of people here, what do I do? Is it gonna be okay? And like not even focusing on the speech. So being able to acknowledge the fear takes its power away. So I will invite you to just consider that. Where are you running from yourselves? And in that spot, how do you start to provide that a seat at the table? Say, all right, well, you're here too. How do I incorporate you into my story? And that way you can start with something like, you know what, I'm on a first date. I'll let you know, I'm nervous right now. Okay, cool. Let that be just part of the story. Instead of like, I hope he doesn't think I'm nervous. If he doesn't think I'm nervous, it's okay. Do I come across okay? It's just part of the thing. So thank you so much for stepping in tonight. Those of you who stepped into something brand new, and those of you at home who perhaps stepped into something brand new, thank you. And wish yourselves a pleasant evening.